All right, let's get started. Thank you everyone for joining today's webinar. My name is Trevin Thompson. I'm the West Quad Director of the AIAS, and I'll be your moderator for today's webinar on the licensure process and NCARB. I'm joined today by three expert panelists. We have Jordan, Nick, and Cameron, who are going to answer your questions regarding the licensure process from a variety of perspectives. We'll start out with a 15-minute presentation giving an overview of the licensure process, and the rest of the time will be available for any and all questions for our panelists to answer live. Before we get started, I'd like to ask the panelists to briefly introduce themselves. Nick, we'll start with you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Trevin, and good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are located. My name is Nick Respecki. I'm with the National Council of Architectural Registration Boards, also known as NCARB. At NCARB, I'm a senior manager on the examination team, where you can guess that I work on the architect registration examination. I've been with NCARB for nearly 10 years, working on the examination that entire time. Prior to joining NCARB, I gained licensure in the District of Columbia, worked for several architecture firms in the DC area before finding my way over to NCARB. So looking forward to presenting today and answering all your questions. So Trevin, back to you.
Sure. Jordan, do you mind introducing yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Great to see everyone today. My name is Jordan Luther, and I am the 68th president of the American Institute of Architecture Students. I joined the AIAS back in 2017, so been really lucky to be a part of the organization, advocating for students for a number of years now, really passionate about leadership and mentorship and community. And I have worked since back in 2016, 2017, when I started working in a small firm, have worked in a number of different firms of different scales throughout the years and really working towards getting my license as a future architect. So really looking forward to the conversation with you all today. And back to you, Trevin.
Thanks, Jordan. And Cameron?
Yeah, thanks, Trevin. Hey, everybody. My name is Cameron Sunkel. I am a current Master's of Architecture student at Clemson University, and I am the student lia or the student arch or I'm the student licensing advisor for AIS Clemson, and I'm grateful to be here today. Thank you.
Thanks, Cameron. And thank you all. Remember, you can submit questions using the Q&A tool throughout the webinar. And if you have to step out at any point during our presentation, a recording of this webinar will be available on YouTube. Okay, Nick, I'll hand it over to you for the presentation.
Awesome. Thank you, Trevin. So what I'm going to do to kick this off is just run through some basic slides about the licensure process, what it takes to become a licensed architect across the different states and jurisdictions. And then we can go ahead and answer some questions after that. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I have a few slides here to present. Give me 1 second to get that fired up. And Trevin, if you give me a thumbs up if you're seeing it on your end, just to confirm. Awesome. Okay, thumbs up to go forward here. So this presentation really focusing on what you all need to know about licensure in pursuing an architecture license. So let's start off with a little bit about NCARB, the National Council of Architectural Registration Board. So if you're sitting here today, I would imagine a lot of you have an idea of what NCARB's role is in all of this. But I would imagine there are some of you probably thinking, yeah, Nick, why do I need to know about NCARB? What's their involvement? And so I'm here to tell you a little bit about that. So there's a map up on the screen. On that map, you'll see, well, obviously the United States as well as some other jurisdictions. So looking at the map, there are 55 licensing boards across the country. So that's the 50 states plus the territory. So we have Guam, the Northern Marianas Islands, District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, U.S. Virgin Islands. So together, those are 55 different places that you all as future architects can earn a license to practice. And so I think thinking about NCARB, these 55 licensing boards, they are the members of NCARB. And so NCARB works with these member jurisdictions to facilitate licensure within their borders. And so many of you are probably familiar with AIA. Obviously, you're involved with AIS. You can think of AIA as the professional organization for architects. So me as an architect, I'm a member of AIA. But it's important to note that NCARB's members are those licensing boards. And so the second part of that is you'll see, you probably have interacted with many architects or have seen their names, and inside their signatures, you see the designation AIA. Important to note that AIA doesn't license individuals, NCARB doesn't license individuals. Ultimately, you will receive your license to practice from a state or jurisdiction. So in my case, I'm licensed in the District of Columbia, so that's where I can call myself an architect. I am not, although I live in Virginia, not licensed, can't practice architecture in Virginia. So tying that back to NCARB, our membership, the 55 boards, we work with them to facilitate licensure. So you'll be hearing a lot from NCARB throughout your process. So how do we work with these boards? We develop national programs that then the boards can adopt as requirements within their borders. And I'll give you a very obvious example. Many of you are going through the Architectural Experience Program today. That's a program developed by NCARB and offered to our state licensing boards. Most have then adopted it as a requirement for licensure within their borders. Same can be said for the ARE, or Architect Registration Examination. That's the national exam developed by NCARB and then offered to our licensing boards. Then they adopt that. So in the case of the ARE, all 55 have adopted that as a requirement for licensure. So you could think of us as sort of the partner with the licensing boards that you'll be dealing with throughout your navigating the path to licensure. So let's talk about the requirements to become an architect. So I mentioned there are 55 different boards where you can earn a license. So yes, that means you could technically have 55 different certificates on your wall, each certificate representing a license. It would be really expensive to renew all those every year, but it is a possibility if you want to fill up a wall in the future. But if you want to be an architect in any of those 55, typically there are three big requirements, and you probably heard of them referred to as the 3 E's. So what are the 3 E's? We'll start with the first one, education. The jurisdictions set requirements on what is the education that's required to earn a license. In the majority of the jurisdictions, 36 of those jurisdictions, that education requirement is a degree from a NAB accredited program. And accreditation is done by NAB, and I'll talk a little bit about that here in a second. So that's sort of the first E. The second E, if a board wants to grant you a license to practice, not only do they want to know you have the education or you've filled their education requirement, they want to know, well, have you worked inside an architecture firm? Do you understand the responsibilities? And do you have the competency in the different tasks that an architect must do to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public? And the evidence is provided through this experience program. And I'll give you some more information on that experience program coming up. So that's the second of the E's. And then finally, there's an assessment. You've gone to school, you're working on your experience. The exam is a professional licensure exam that basically is assessing your competency to then protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public. It's, can you do it? Are you making correct decisions to make sure you're not endangering the lives of any of the public? So those are sort of the 3 E's and the essence of earning a license in any of the 55 jurisdictions. Now, what's really important, I mentioned earlier that all 55 require the ARE. When it comes to education, there are some differences. And so we have this great tool on our website that you can click on the different states or jurisdictions, and you can see the requirements to earn a license within that jurisdiction. So you could go in here, click on Texas, and see, what do I need to do to earn a license in Texas? So this is a fantastic tool. You don't really need to worry about it today, but down the road, you'll reach a point where you have to pick a jurisdiction where you want your first license. This tool is going to be a fantastic resource for you. And then down the road, after you earn your initial license, when you're looking for maybe reciprocal licensure in a different jurisdiction, you can go to this map, see reciprocal licensing requirements by jurisdiction. Great tool that know that this is available down the road if you need it. So I'm going to ask you a question actually using this Menti tool. So you'll see a QR code up on the screen. Grab your cell phones, go ahead and pull up your camera, put it over that QR code. Click the link, and it's going to ask you a question. We'll see where everyone's at as far as the education level here today. So I'll give you all a few seconds to do that. Okay, looks like the responses are coming in here. Majority look like they're falling under the NAB accredited degree masters. Okay. Couple under NAB accredited degree bachelors, some non-NAB bachelors. We got a community college in there and other in there. Okay. NAB accredited degree, masters taking the lead there. Big lead, 8. Okay. Great. So sort of a broad spectrum of attendees here in the webinar today. So we'll be talking about how your education level may impact you as you go forward in earning initial licensure. Let's first talk about NAB. So NAB is the accrediting body for architecture programs. I think one thing to note is NAB doesn't accredit a school. It instead accredits a program within that school. There are NAB accredited programs all across the country. And I think the thing to know about the NAB accredited program, and I mentioned it earlier, is we have 55 licensing boards. Of those 55, 36 or 37 of them, actually it's 37 require a degree from a NAB accredited program. There's another 18. Those 18 do not require a degree from a NAB accredited program. Basically, what they do instead is they have equivalence, whether it be if you don't have a degree from a NAB accredited program, you can work an X number of years in an architecture firm and it'll offset that. And if you're curious what those states are or jurisdictions are, if you go back to that licensing requirements map that I showed you earlier, there's a filter option that you can click for jurisdictions that require degrees from NAB accredited programs. Go ahead and click on that and it'll tell you all the states, jurisdictions that do require it, and then you can see the jurisdictions that don't require it. And what you can also do is if a jurisdiction doesn't require it, you can click on it and see what the requirements are if it's not a degree from NAB accredited program. Now, for all of you that responded in the last question that you're currently in a degree from a degree program that's NAB accredited, you are setting yourselves up for a very flexible future. And what I mean by that is if you have a degree from a NAB accredited program, you are going to have the flexibility to basically get licensed in all 55 jurisdictions because the NAB accredited degree is going to be accepted. And so if you want ultimate flexibility, or maybe you're sitting here today and you're in an unaccredited Bachelor of Science in Architecture and you're thinking, Nick, I'm not sure if I should go on and get a degree from a NAB accredited program. There are some states where you don't need to get that. However, if you want a lot of flexibility, it is a good option to pursue. And if you're curious where these programs are, you can go to NAB's website, you can search, and it can actually pull up a list of all the accredited programs across the country. So this is a great resource for you if you're looking for those next steps as far as education. So that's sort of the first E and the 3 E's. So let's talk about the second E, the Architectural Experience Program. Mentioned earlier, this is a requirement across the majority of jurisdictions have adopted this as a requirement. And so this is basically a program that documents your experience that you are earning within an architecture firm or also within other work settings. And I'll talk about what those are. So to earn architectural experience program hours, there are 2 work settings. Setting A, this is working in an architecture firm. So if you're working for a firm like Gensler or HDR or Stantec, the firms that are lawfully practicing architecture, and you're working under the supervision of an architect licensed in any of the jurisdictions, it doesn't have to be the jurisdiction you're working in, you are working in setting A. And so the minimum number of hours you'll need to earn in setting A is 1,860 hours. And so you could also earn all your hours for AXP within that experience setting. So that's something to note. Now, also understanding that there's other opportunities to gain experience that isn't an architect, and NCARB allows you to submit hours under setting O. So some examples of setting O. Let's say you worked under a licensed landscape architect, maybe a civil engineer, another licensed engineer. You can submit those hours to the AXP. Design or construction related employment. Also another option, maybe you're working for a designer or someone who isn't an actual architect, you can still submit some of those hours under the O setting. Now, one thing to note that isn't on this slide, if you go to our AXP guidelines, you'll see each of these different opportunities. They all have a number of hours as far as a cap, how many you can actually submit under these. So that's really important. Just because you can submit under design or construction related employment doesn't necessarily mean you can earn all your hours in that area. It's going to be capped at 300 and some hours, again, outlined in the guidelines. Community-based design center collaborative, CSI certifications, design competitions, professional conduct, CE courses. You could take a site visit with a mentor. That mentor would need to be a licensed architect, but that's another opportunity. Finally, let's say you did some construction work. If you're maybe last summer you worked for a contractor, did some actual construction work, you can submit those hours. It's going to be capped, but that is an opportunity, as well as doing AIA, CE, continuing education courses that are approved for HSW, other opportunities as well too. We're going to go ahead and jump to another survey question here and see where everyone stands. So what AXP experience could you gain right away? So if you're sitting here today, what could you gain? And this also could apply, maybe you've already submitted AXP experience. You can also respond from that perspective as well. We'll see where everyone's at. Continuing education courses, good. Setting A, setting A. Okay, the setting A's are coming in here. Three. More CE courses. Okay, so it looks like we have a mixed bag here. Setting A, we have some continuing education courses. Someone actually did some construction work. I think the sort of moral of this story is if you've done some related work, maybe you didn't work for an architect, go to our guidelines, look to see if it qualifies, and if it does, go ahead and submit that experience. You don't want to lose out on experience hours that you have actually already completed. Another 5 for setting A. So let's jump forward. So many of you I know have worked in firms already, or maybe you're looking to get that first internship or job this coming up semester or next summer. It's really important during that interview process to ask questions to a potential employer. What support do they offer employees completing AXP? Do they have an AXP supervisor at the firm? Is there someone licensed in one of the 55 jurisdictions that could sign off on your hours? Another good question to ask. Are they going to help you gain experience across all the practice areas? You don't want to be stuck in a situation where you join a firm and they have you spending 40 hours a week doing renderings in the maybe programming and analysis or project planning and design experience areas, because it's going to be really difficult to get some of those other hours. So ask the firm, how are they going to support you in getting different types of experience while in the firm? Do they provide any financial support? So especially when you get to maintaining an NCARB record, scheduling and taking your exams, purchasing study materials to begin preparing for the exam, it can be costly. And so a good question to ask your employer is, will they financially support you throughout that process? Or do they have firm-owned study resources that could benefit you throughout that process? So another good question to ask. And then I mentioned it about asking about reimbursing for NCARB record fees. That's another good question to ask an employer that will really signify their support for helping individuals pursue architectural licensure. AXP guidelines, if you haven't looked at these yet, that's okay. I would say when you're at a point that you're ready to begin logging your AXP hours, whether it's you have gained some experience working for an architect doing construction, or maybe other things within the setting O, even if it's just AIA, continuing education courses for HSW, make sure you go into this document, read through it. It's not very long. It won't take you too much time to navigate it. Get a little bit of an understanding of what it takes to complete the program. I'll tell you that probably 99% of your questions you'll have about logging hours, what hours count, what hours don't count, they're going to be answered within these guidelines. So take advantage of this. Make sure to check these out before you start logging your hours. Starting your record. We get the question all the time. At what point, Nick, should I start my record? My advice to you all as students is when you have experience to log, that's a point to begin starting your record and keeping it active. If you have not logged, if you have not worked at all and you have no experience to report, then there's no reason to set up a record. There is a fee associated with this. NCARB doesn't want to take any money from you if we're not providing you a service as far as documenting that AXP, verifying your transcript. And so please hold off until you're ready to start logging those hours. When you are, that's a good point to go ahead and start your NCARB record. You will use this record not only for your AXP hours, but also you're going to use it when you begin taking your exam. So that could be scheduling your divisions of the ARE, seeing your score reports after the fact. And ultimately, all that information, including your transcript, is going to be sent to a state licensing board to ultimately provide you with a license to practice. We'll talk briefly about the ARE, and then we'll be able to, in the NCARB certificate, and then we'll jump over and answer some questions. The architect registration examination, I said at the beginning, this is what I spend my days working on. I know it sounds super boring. And actually, when I was in many of your positions in school, I never imagined that I would be spending my time working on the ARE. But it's actually, it's extremely, it's very interesting. And it's something that you all are eventually going to go through as future architects, is navigating and taking the ARE. A couple things, high level points on this exam. It's the same everywhere. So that means if you're going for a licensure in Texas, Maine, Oregon, California, Colorado, doesn't matter, all 55 jurisdictions accept the same ARE, and it is the same regardless of geographic location. It also is the same. Let's say you're living in Florida, but you're taking the ARE for a license in Colorado. It's the same exam. It doesn't matter where you're located. And so one national exam, you can use it for a license in any of the jurisdictions. There are 6 ARE divisions, and those of you going through the AXP program, you'll notice that these look familiar because these divisions align with the experience areas in AXP. I won't go through each of these divisions, but you'll see roughly for each of the 6 divisions of the ARE, the number of items. So when we say items, that's the number of questions that are on that division of the ARE. And so it ranges from 65 in practice management all the way up to 100 in project planning and design, project development, documentation. And then you'll notice the time. So that's basically the time, the length of each of those exams. When you get to a point and you're ready to begin taking these exams, I think a good thing to know is you can take them in any order. And so my best advice for you all down the road is don't jump into these and say, well, NCARB listed out practice management first. I'm going to start with that division. Look at your AXP hours, look at your experience, and begin with the division that you feel the most confident in as far as you've gained the competencies to prove it on the ARE. And so, again, you don't need to worry about that if you're in school right now. However, down the road, be strategic about how you take these exams. As I mentioned, you can take them in any order that works for you. Just like the AXP guidelines, we have the ARE 5.0 guidelines. It's going to answer the majority of your questions you have about the exam. It breaks down not only the content on the exam, but all the policies surrounding taking the exam. Also, it lists out, the question we get all the time is, well, where do the items come from? What do I study to begin preparing for the ARE? We have a reference guide included in this document that includes all the popular reference books that many of you are probably familiar with that our volunteer architect item writers use to author the items on the ARE. And so I'll throw out a couple names here, and I bet you all are familiar. Francis Ching. Francis Ching, our item writers love Francis Ching books. Building Construction Illustrated, Building Structures Illustrated. He has Building Codes Illustrated. A very popular author and book that is used by item writers. MEEB, Mechanical and Electrical Equipment for Buildings. I would imagine many of you have used that book in your systems class in school. And so it lists out books like that, architectural graphic standards that are used to write items. So straight to the source. So that's all included in our guidelines. You don't need to worry about this now if you're in school or you don't anticipating taking the exam anytime soon, but know this document exists and it's a good starting point when you begin taking the ARE. Finally, the last section is, so let's say you get through the 3 E's, you finish your education, you finish your experience, take and complete, pass the ARE, you get your license. What next? What happens to your NCARB record? At that point, you'll have the opportunity to gain the or earn the NCARB certification. So what is the NCARB certification? You'll probably see in my name here today, you'll see after Nick Respecki, AIA, then you'll see NCARB. And you'll see that in other architects' sort of signatures that you encounter. Basically, what that means is it's a credential that basically means you've met the standard for the NCARB certificate. Now, what does that NCARB certificate get you? When you earn licensure, you're going to have to maintain professional development hours. You're going to have to do them every couple of years. In my case, for the District of Columbia, I do have to do 24 hours every 2 years. Well, a benefit of having this certificate, NCARB offers continuing education for you to take and then provide that evidence to the state licensing board. Another, probably the biggest benefit is the certificate. You can think of it as a passport to gain reciprocal licensure across state lines. And so me sitting here today, I'm licensed in DC. If I wanted to get a license in Virginia or let's say Maryland in the area, I could use my NCARB certificate to be sent to those state licensing boards to then grant me a reciprocal license. So you can think of it as a passport to reciprocal licensure. So it's a fantastic credential. And actually, I'm not saying that because I worked at NCARB. Actually, I came from a large firm. When I was working there, I actually had the NCARB certificate before joining NCARB because of the value and the ability to use it to gain licenses across jurisdictional lines. Really important knowing that many architecture firms don't just work locally, they will work across the country. So how do you get a certificate? There are many paths to getting it, and don't worry about that today. I'll give you the sort of typical path that we see most often is an individual has a degree from a NAB accredited program. They've completed their AXP, they've completed their ARE, they earn their initial license, and at that point, they would qualify for the NCARB certificate. If you're looking at this and you're saying, yeah, but Nick, I might not have the degree from the NAB accredited program, I'm not going to go through here today, but there is an option for you. So when you get to a point of earning that license, go to our website, look at the paths to earning the NCARB certificate, and most likely there will be a path for you. So next steps, where does this leave you? Make sure you're subscribed to NCARB's newsletters. If you have unsubscribed, you can go back to our website, make sure you subscribe so you're getting all the latest information. NCARB relies heavily on email communication, and we want to make sure you're getting all the resources that we're sending out. Check your jurisdictional requirements. You don't need to worry about this until the point where you're ready to begin taking your exams. At that point is when you're going to have to pick a jurisdiction for initial licensure. So don't worry about that today if you're not taking the exams or looking to take the exams in the near future. Keep your NCARB record up to date. That is, if you're ready to open an NCARB record and start logging hours. I mentioned it earlier. If you don't want to log hours, submit your transcript or do anything with it, don't worry about setting it up until you're ready to start logging those hours. And then reach out to us. We're here at NCARB, happy to help. ncarb.org, contact. And so we also, you could call us. We have a great customer service team. Feel free to reach out to us, and we're happy to help out with any of your questions or concerns. One final question for you all. What's your next licensure goal? Thinking about where you are right now, what's your next goal? It could be long-term, it could be short-term. We'll see where everyone stands here. And I'll give you all a couple seconds to complete this. Finish the degree. Great. Yeah, that's a fantastic goal. Finish hours. Awesome. Those are goals set based on two of the E's, education and experience. See if any more come in here. Yeah, finish AXP hours. Great goal. Someone's up there. Awesome. You're already looking to get the NCARB certificate. Fantastic. Get the architect's license. Take my first ARE. Yeah, the first one is always it's tough. I think back to when I was going through the process, I was nervous. I will admit I didn't have a ton of confidence in my knowledge and ability to take the exam. And so the first one's the toughest, and you'll be surprised. You could shock yourself and realize you actually know a lot more than what you think. Take the test, start the AREs, log AXP hours. So yeah, a lot of goals. And I think it's really important throughout this process is to set goals, stick to your goals, and you will ultimately be successful navigating the licensure process. We also have an architect licensing advisor community. Find your advisor and take advantage of them. The NAB programs and schools across the country have advisors. AA chapters have advisors. States, they have advisors. Firms, many firms across the country have advisors. Luckily, you can go right to our website, ncarb.org advisors. You can search and find an advisor near you. If you would rather talk to an advisor than us at NCARB, fine with us. Use the resources that are available. This advisor network is fantastic. They're trained by NCARB. We put on a conference every couple of years called the Licensing Advisor Summit. Train them up. We do webinars, so they are prepped and willing to support you along your path to licensure. So take advantage of this community. And then finally, join the conversation. You can see we're all over social media. When you're at the point of studying for the exam, our ARE online community is great. You can go on there. You can get assistance from testers across the country. Some are testing from other places across the world, and so great community there online. And then reach out to us any of the social media platforms. And I mentioned earlier, if you want an immediate response, probably the quickest way to get a response from NCARB is go ahead and call us. A great customer service team. They'll be happy to walk you through, answer any of your questions. Trevin, I'm going to go ahead and stop there. I know went a little bit long on those slides, but I think we're at the point that we're sort of happy to answer some of the questions that will be coming in from some of the attendees here today. So yeah, back to you, Trevin.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for such a fantastic presentation. We actually already have a couple questions lined up. The first of which actually you might be most appropriate to answer. From the chat, can I switch my jurisdiction halfway through the testing process?
Absolutely. You can do that. We have a tool built in right within your NCARB record. So that's, yeah, you can go ahead and do that. And if you have any issues, you can go ahead and call up our customer service team. They're willing to help you navigate that transition process. Depending on the state that you're changing to, there might be some additional applications or something that will have to be done with the state. It really just depends. So yes, absolutely, you can do that. Don't be fearful of if you're at the point of taking your first exam and you're like, I'm not sure if Louisiana is it, but I think that's my best guess right now. Do your best to pick your state or jurisdiction of initial licensure and know that if something changes down the road, yes, you can make the change, and our customer service team is happy to walk you through the process if needed. So, yeah.
Great, thank you. Next question. Cameron or Nick, you might be able to answer this one. Besides being able to take the exams while in school, what other benefits does iPal offer?
Yeah, I'll start off with that since I am currently an iPal student at Clemson. I think first and foremost, it is definitely taking the exams while you're in school. Typically, you would have to wait until you graduated an accredited program to begin to take those exams. But additionally, it shows firms that your willingness during school to kind of leapfrog and try to get ahead and get these exams taken while you're in school is something that a lot of people in the profession wish they could have had that opportunity. And it's also a time for you to just kind of show your dedication to getting that licensure and kind of being at the forefront of this profession.
Nothing more to add from me, Trevin. I think Cam, great response. I think you're the best one to speak to that. So I agree. I agree with everything Cameron said.
Thanks. Moving in towards experience, how do you suggest recording AXP hours? By the week when you record out, or by week when you record hours for pay stubs, or in bulk after getting a copy of pay stubs for a specific time period? Maybe Jordan or Cameron, if you'd like to speak to that.
Sure, absolutely. So I personally have been recording mine in bulk, and I found that to be really effective. What I would do is when I was working at a firm, so before becoming AIS president, I was working full time for a year. And what I did was every couple of months, I would get a report from my firm. So every project that I was working on, I would record whether I was working in CDs or DDs, or if this was more concept-based projects. I would record all of the projects that I was working on, and then they'd each have a code of which project it was. And then I would take the report outs, and then I had a spreadsheet that someone who was working at the firm I was at had gone through and created a spreadsheet that kind of divvied everything up into the specific divisions, categories. And it made it really easy. So that way I could go in and record the specific amount of hours, and then I could then just take that and input it into the bulk. And I found that to be really effective. But I will say, do as I say, not as I do, and be very proactive in recording your hours. I have found it to be a little bit more challenging now that I've since left the firm. I hadn't recorded all of my hours quite yet. So I've been going kind of back and forth and trying to get all of my hours logged. So be very proactive in recording your hours.
Thanks, Jordan. And Cameron, I believe you just finished your AXP hours. Any additional recommendations?
Yeah, like what Jordan said, I used the bulk method, but what I tried to do was NCARB has a great color coding system with each division. And so what I chose to do is the firm I work for had an analog and a digital timesheet. And so in my analog, I chose to color code each kind of hour, half an hour, 15 minutes that went to each division to try to capture all those hours. And like Jordan said, you have to be very careful with the bulk um, hours that you capture all of them. You don't want these to lapse and potentially get half credit. You want to get the full credit because you worked an hour, so you should get that 1 credit hour.
Great. Thank you. Um, Related to the IPAL program, if a student is not in an IPAL program, how long would it take for them to finish all of their exams after graduation? Maybe Nick?
If they're not, I guess to clarify, if they're not in an IPAL program,
Yes.
yeah, it really depends on the individual. I think we actually have some great data on what it takes a typical candidate. If you go over and search our website for NCAR by the numbers, we have all sorts of data on the length of time it takes candidates from start to finish, taking their first exam to the last exam. Um, but here's the thing, don't put too much into that because we've seen people pass it in as little as a week, and we've seen people take years in over 10 years they've been testing. And so it's really up to, and I don't want to say, sound like it's up to the individual, but it really is. I think the best thing that you can do is lay out a plan for yourself. What works for you? What works for your job? What works for your home life responsibilities? Um, Whether it's maybe you have a plan that you're going to take one exam a month and you're hopeful that you get through all of them in 6 months. That would be great. And that's a very good plan to stick with. I think what's really important though, again, make sure it's not an unreasonable expectation. These are professional licensing exams. It does take some time to prepare for them. They it don't put too much pressure on yourself and just plan accordingly. Is sort of the advice I'd have for you. Most candidates take roughly around 2 years. You'll see the data from start to finish, from the point when they begin taking their exams. Now, it also depends on when you start taking your exams. In most jurisdictions, uh, once you fulfill the education requirement, that's the point where you can begin testing. And so we see some candidates who will start right after they provide NCARB with their transcript from a NAB accredited program that gets approved. They get their eligibilities turned on and they're off to the races. We see other individuals that they want to work a few years and then they get their eligibilities open. So it's really, you can do it as soon as fulfilling that education requirement in most jurisdictions. So in theory, you could knock it out really quickly. But knowing that you also have to worry about logging all your AXP hours, the 3,740 hours. We do see many candidates that finish the exam before they finish their hours. So that's something that you could do as well too. But yeah, Trevin, it really, I think it depends on the individual. It depends on how aggressive you want to be with your testing. And if you want to be super aggressive and schedule them all in 1 week, go for it. You can do that. Just know that if you do fail a division, there is a waiting period of 60 days before you can retest. You can retest on the same division up to 3 times within a 12-month span. But go in positive, go in thinking you're going to pass, not fail, and then you don't have to worry about that. So
Great. Thank you. And with it being, a several step process, follow-up question from the chat. Do you have any advice for staying motivated once you've started taking the tests? Maybe Nick or anybody else who might have
I guess
advice.
I'll look to Cameron and Jordan, and then if you have any advice you've heard or experienced, and then I can chime in after you two.
Yeah, I'll start us off if you don't mind, Jordan. For me, what I chose to do was create this plan and understand that plans always change. And this can be a very large task. And you'll find people in the profession that have failed multiple exams multiple times. And so going with that understanding, it's okay to fail and fail again. It's also finding that community that can support you. When you have a community that is there for you when you pass and for when you fail, that can help keep you motivated. Once you pass your first exam, you're like, oh wow, okay, I only have 5 more to go. Check off another one. You have 4 more, 3 more, 2 more. And then at some point you'll find that you'll pass all of them. And then NCARB sends you this great email that says congratulations, and will then send all your information to your local jurisdiction, and then they also will congratulate you as well. So it is a monumental task, but having set tools and kind of the discipline to further develop, which you're doing in school or as a high school student or in the profession, you're trying to have this opportunity to refine your ability as an architect. You're going to want to bring that into studying and taking these exams. It's a task, but everyone has the ability to do it and become licensed.
I think that those were fantastic points, Cameron. To build off of that and further underscore, I think the importance of community is really pivotal in working towards passing the exam. So, really finding your group that can support you to do so. So, looking at when you are choosing where you're going to work, finding a firm that supports you in your licensure growth is really pivotal to making sure that you're able to achieve that milestone. So, having conversations like, if the firm is able to pay for your exams. I've heard of a couple of friends of mine have firms that will allow a couple of hours a week for them to study for their exams and making sure that they're really getting the support that they need. I know there's also a number of different tools that you can use to study for your exams too. So seeing if your firm, maybe one of the things that when you're negotiating with them is in addition to looking at having them cover your exams, maybe they also will provide you some study materials as well. And then coming up with a plan to ensure that you're getting your studying in. So being really transparent, I think, with your community. So sharing with your firm that you want to be licensed in a couple of years and talking about your plan to get you there, making sure that you have a mentor that's really going to set you up for success. And I think additionally, too, looking to your local community, whether it's the local AIA or AIS or NOMA, maybe they have a study group that you're able to be a part of and seeing if that community as well. And you also have a little bit more accountability there too, with not only with your firm and then also with a group of individuals are looking towards the same goal. It's a very long process, of course, and it's not an easy one to get your license. I mean, just to get through the exams is a huge undertaking, I think, for all of us. But I think that, the way that NCARB has set up that path to success has been really great, and we can all get there working together.
Thanks, everybody. Really great advice. Staying with the exams, our next question from the chat. If after getting licensed in one jurisdiction, I decide to get another license in another jurisdiction, do I have to retake the exam? Nick?
No. Simple answer there, Trevin. It's the ARE is the same in all 55 jurisdictions. You take and pass it once. You are ARE complete as long as you keep an active license in some jurisdiction. A state isn't going to say to you, "Hey, Trevin, we know you passed the ARE in Montana, but we need you to retake it." No one's going to ask that. It's the same exam. So you take it, you pass it once, you're ARE complete. I will add one note to that. There are some jurisdictions, I'll use California as an example, that California has the California Supplemental Exam, or the CSE, you might hear it referred to as. That's an additional exam that's jurisdiction specific to California that you would have to take if you were going to, let's say, California. So some states may have another exam, whether it's like California's or it's on state regulatory policies or ethics or something of that nature. You might have to do that for a reciprocal license, but you will not have to retake the ARE again.
Great, thank you. Glad my Montana test will count. Another NCARB question for you, Nick. Once you start or set up your NCARB record, do you have to keep paying for it even if you have no hours to log in?
So you would renew your NCARB record every year. Now, if let's say you're like, you know what, I'm not working in a firm probably the next few years. I'm doing something unrelated. It's not going to count for AXB. Technically, yes, you could just let your record lapse. NCARB doesn't get rid of your data though. That data will live within your NCARB record. And so if you ultimately want to reactivate it down the road, you will have to pay a reactivation fee. But we're not going to get rid of your data. You're not going to lose all of your previous exam passes, or you're not going to lose those AXP hours that were approved by a supervisor. NCARB keeps that data. So if your record was lapsed for a couple of years, no big deal. After those 2 years, come back. You can reactivate it and continue logging hours, scheduling your exams, whatever you need to do. So
Great, thanks. That's something I did just last summer, actually. All right, another question about iPal. So maybe Karen, you might be best to answer this one. For taking the ARE as an iPal student, since we can choose the order of the exam, does that mean we can choose when during our master's we can take the exam? And additionally, could we take all 6 divisions during the same year?
Yeah, great question from the audience. For the iPal program, you can choose to take any exam in any order, and it would be based upon your own educational route. I know multiple schools have more challenging semesters and then potentially lighter workload semesters. And so I would personally recommend on those lighter workload semesters to take exams and then leave the more challenging semesters for you just to work on school. And again, there is no order that you have to take them in. I know a lot of people choose to take the pro practice exams first. So that's construction evaluations, the pro practice and the practice management, and then choose to take the more difficult technical exams on the second half of their studying.
So thanks. Jordan, can you start recording your AXP hours prior to beginning a NAB accredited program?
Yes, you can. So I actually started recording my hours. I had wished I had started recording them sooner than I did. So I had started working at a firm back in high school and I didn't record my hours, even though my advisor and mentor at the time had told me to. But you can start recording your hours, and it's been really helpful to be able to get that experience early on.
Awesome, thank you. I'm going to bring it back to Nick for this one. Um, Question from the chat. My bachelor's degree is not accredited, and I'm planning to work for a couple years before going back to grad school. The question is, I'm wondering if it is possible to start taking the ARE before you get your education requirement from a NAB accredited program.
The answer is it depends on the jurisdiction. I know that's not a direct answer to the question, but there are some jurisdictions, as I mentioned earlier, I believe there are 18 that don't require a degree from a NAB accredited program to earn a license. So what those jurisdictions do establish is the point in time when you begin taking the ARE. And so what I would recommend doing is go over to our jurisdictional map that's on our website and looking at the jurisdictions that don't require a degree from a NAB accredited program. And then if you have an idea, let's say you're this individual's thinking Maryland. Let's say you're thinking Maryland. You can go to Maryland's website and look at the requirements, and they will tell you at what point you can begin testing. And typically, if it's a program or if it's a jurisdiction that doesn't require a degree from a NAB accredited program, they'll define a certain number of years of experience that are required to open your exam eligibility. So you're going to have to look at basically the state level or jurisdiction level to find out what that requirement is. But yes, short answer is yes, there are some jurisdictions that will allow you to begin testing without having a degree from a NAB accredited program.
Awesome. Thanks, Nick. Cameron, another iPal question. Did your iPal program provide supplemental study documents or guides for taking the ARE? Oh, it looks like you're on mute.
Good catch, Trevin. Thank you. At Clemson University that I'm currently attending, we do have a pretty robust supplemental study material. And what I would advise an IPAL student is talk to their administration and the directors of their IPAL program and see if their their library, their architecture library has any of the recommended NCARB study material, if they could provide opportunities for online material, may that be Black Spectacles, Amber Book, any other kind of study materials. And I will say, take advantage of NCARB's practice exams. You do only get one bank of questions for each exam, but it helps you see and understand how that exam format is laid out. You get to see and understand each tool, the whiteboard, the calculator, all kinds of different things. And so, like I said, I would recommend talking with your directors and seeing what opportunities and what study materials are at your university.
Great, thank you. This next question, again, about IPAL program, students are really interested. Maybe Jordan, with your experience in advocacy, or Nick, of course, with your NCARB expertise, might be able to answer this one. This student is just now finding out about IPAL programs. What are the steps to take to start one at their university?
Nick, I think I might lean on you for this one.
Oh, I was hoping you were going to do it, Jordan. I was like, oh, I'll let Jordan take this one. Yeah, and so our IPAL program, if it's something you're interested in at your program, your school, we have a web page dedicated to it, and you can go there. You can see all of the universities that have programs, and then it'll list out all the programs as well. And I would say if it's something that your program may be interested in, if you're a student, might be something to bring up with the faculty. And if it is a desire of that program or the university, you can reach out to us at NCARB and we can begin the process of determining if your school is a candidate to be an IPAL program. So it's not as simple as going on our website, checking a box for a university. There are things that have to be in place for it actually to occur. But yes, check out the IPAL page on our website, and then if it's something that you and maybe the faculty within the program or school, university are interested in, reach out to us at NCARB, and we can look into it.
Awesome, thank you. I think this is probably going to be our last question for the day, and this is just for the group. What are some great tips for finding a good mentor while still in college? Maybe I'll poke Jordan to go first on this one.
Sure. Yeah, I think that that's a really wonderful question. I think consider where you want to be in the next couple of years and see if there's, I think having, I might kind of go against the question and say have multiple mentors is another really good thing to do. Think about different aspects of your goals and see if you can find individuals that have either met those goals or are working towards them. So I know when I was at my previous job, they had recommended that I have a mentor for my AXP hours and helping me to achieve that goal. Also having a mentor looking at career-wise and professionally within the firm that I was at. So thinking about types of projects that I wanted to be on, finding those like interests, but then also finding as broader goals for your professional goals. So thinking about if you really want to be involved in advocacy or policy, or you're really passionate about sustainability, finding ways where you can have mentors at different stages. And I think also you can have a mentor and you can also be a mentor. So thinking about taking all the information that you're learning and all of your experiences and being able to pass that on to others is also really powerful.
And
So thank you. Great. I
sorry,
was going to
I'll
poke you.
piggyback off of
Thanks.
Jordan as well, as I think half the battle is advocating and advocating for yourself. If you're looking for a specific role, go find that person in a firm or go find that person in the faculty at your university or a potential student that is a year or 2 years above you and go advocate to be like, hey, I'm new at this. I'd like to learn this. Is there any way you could be my mentor and have that kind of dialogue? Because if you don't say anything, that mentorship opportunity may never come along.
And Cameron, Jordan, fully agree with everything you all said. And actually, Trevin, when you asked the question, I was reflecting back of on being a student long time ago. It was at Ball State University. I actually in the early years in the program, I actually didn't know any architects outside of the faculty that also held a license to practice architecture. And I reflecting back on that, one of the hardest things is, well, where do I, thinking from the context of an architect mentor, where do I find one? You're sort of nervous. Well, I could reach out to them maybe on like I could reach out to them just by email and but then it's sort of it's risky because you're like, I don't know anything about that person. I'm just going to reach out and ask for a mentor. So I thinking back, the first sort of internship I had the after the third year of architecture school, it's you meet through the sort of internship, you meet a lot of architects in the first firm, and I think that's an opportunity to not just think of the individuals you meet through an internship as temporary, just for the summer. If there's someone there that you're back to Jordan's point, that you see yourself, or you're like, oh, that's what I want to do down the road, or this person, maybe they just have really good advice. Maybe they're not even an architect. Maybe they just are, maybe they're an engineer or a different discipline within the firm, but they just have a lot of good advice. They're supportive, and they listen. I think that's the other thing, that they will listen to your concerns and help guide you along the way. Hang on to those people, even if you only meet them for a summer, because you can use them down the road. And then also don't think you're just going to have one mentor. You sort of you collect them over the years, and before you know it, you're like, I have 15 different mentors in different parts of the profession. Maybe they're not even related to the profession. They just have a lot of good professional advice. And so I guess my sort of words of wisdom there are, through those small experiences, like short internships or jobs working in firms, hang on to those relationships, use them, find as many mentors as you can, because you can, people have a lot to offer. And then the flip side of that, as Jordan was saying, then figure out how you can mentor others and give back. Whether it's, if you're a graduate student, how can you mentor undergraduate students? How can you help those out, those individuals out who you're sort of thinking back, I wish I knew this at that point. Now, how can I help someone? And so, yeah, and a mentor just doesn't have to be an architect. There are all sorts of mentors. Collect them all and utilize them throughout your career.
That's great advice. Well, we've reached our last few minutes for today's webinar, but before we wrap up, I'd like to ask each of you three to share one final takeaway or piece of advice for our viewers. Maybe we'll start with Cameron.
Yeah, thanks, Trevin. I would say a piece of advice would be to advocate for yourself, because not many people will advocate for you at times. And so having that opportunity to go on, say, firm tours in your university or go to networking events, provide that time to speak with people. That's also another great opportunity to find mentors. It's, again, just advocate for yourself and you'll go so far in life. It'll be incredible.
Thanks. Jordan?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think my final piece of advice would be to be proactive and be transparent. Be proactive and start early, and especially with, recording your hours and getting that experience, and know that all experience can inform everything that you're doing in one way or another. All experience can be really valuable too, even if it might not feel like it at the time. You can really always just try and get something out of it. I think with being transparent, being able to be transparent with others about what your goals are, that can really help to motivate you and have some accountability as you're looking towards getting those goals. And then you can also get the support that you need. So I would say be proactive and be transparent.
Awesome. Thank you. And Nick?
Yeah, Jordan, you mentioned goals. That's where I was going with the goals. I think it's easy to sit back and say, my goal is to become a licensed architect. And I think that's fantastic. But also focus on just those little wins, those little goals, whether it's I just want to finish my degree from a NAP program. That's a great goal. You don't sort of one goal at a time. I want to complete the practice management experience area of AXP. That's great. And so set small goals that you can accomplish. And then there's a lot, and it's easy to get overwhelmed by becoming an architect when you're like, oh my gosh, all this schooling and all this experience, and then I have to make it through this exams. If you set small goals that you can accomplish, you can work your way through, and you'll feel proud as you're going through the process and accomplished. So set goals, long-term goals, and those small goals, and then celebrate those wins along the way as well too. So.
Great. All great pieces of advice. Well, unfortunately, that brings us to the end of our webinar today. So thank you to our panelists for sharing your expertise today, and thank you to all of our viewers for attending. If you couldn't see the entire webinar, you'll be able to watch a recording later on NCARB's YouTube channel. We're so glad you were able to join us. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks.